Duluth, Minnesota. Glensheen Mansion. Lake Superior lies perfectly still, so smooth it feels as if the sky has descended to rest on the earth. But beneath this calm, something else stirs. Something every visitor can sense, even if no one can explain it. In the early morning, when the doors inside the estate are opened, strange details emerge. The lights are on. The fireplace charcoal is still warm, and on the carpet of one room, there are marks. This is no ordinary house. This is Glensheen, a 39-room palace, once a symbol of America's industrial age. A home built for wealth, power, and legacy. Yet today, it is remembered for something else: blood. Inside this house, 2 people were murdered. A woman lay collapsed near the staircase, and a man upstairs, trapped in his own bedroom. For police, this wasn't just a murder case. It was a riddle. Because a house like Glensheen isn't made of stone and timber alone. Its walls hold decades of silence. And when that silence breaks, the sound is louder than any gunshot. But the most terrifying part isn't that a murder happened here. The real question is, what turned this house into a place where simply living inside felt like punishment? Long before that night, Glensheen was the perfect American dream. A wealthy industrialist, a magnificent mansion, a family that seemed to have everything. Yet there was always coldness, always distance, always control. This is not just a story of blood spilled on one night. It is the story of a home built not for love, but for domination. A house where every room controlled someone's life, and where living inside slowly broke the people who called it home. To understand, we must go back. Before the murders, before the police, before the house itself. We must meet the man who built Glensheen. A man who made a fortune, but never found peace. The story starts with Chester Congdon. In the late 19th century, he was the embodiment of the American rise. A self-made lawyer turned industrial strategist. He understood that the future belonged not to gold alone, but to industry, logistics, and control. Congdon attached himself to iron mining, railroads, and shipping on Lake Superior. Money came fast, too fast. By the early 1900s, he was one of Minnesota's wealthiest men. But unlike flamboyant tycoons, Chester Congdon was cold, methodical, and intensely private. Wealth to him was proof of dominance. Over markets, over men, over fate. When it came time to build a home, he did not commission warmth. He commissioned authority. Construction began in 1905 on the edge of Lake Superior. The location was deliberate. Elevated, isolated, commanding the water like a silent sentry. Congdon hired the best architects and spared no expense. Italian marble, African mahogany, custom ironwork, hand-carved stone. Every material chosen to outlast the people who would live among it. Glensheen was not designed to adapt to a family. The family was expected to adapt to Glensheen. 39 rooms, hidden corridors, doors within doors. Not openness, but structure. Congdon believed order produced excellence. Meals ran on schedule. Behavior followed rules. Emotion was not rewarded. It was managed. In public, the Congdons appeared perfect. But behind closed doors, Glensheen was emotionally cold. Clara, his wife, lived surrounded by luxury but deprived of intimacy. The children grew up in vast rooms where voices echoed back unanswered. Love was conditional, measured by obedience. When Chester died in 1916, he left behind a mansion that preserved hierarchy, a fortune tied to expectations, a legacy that demanded maintenance, not love. Ownership passed to his heirs, but the atmosphere didn't change. Glensheen was no longer just a house. It was a pressure chamber. And pressure, when sealed long enough, doesn't disappear, it explodes. By the 1960s and 70s, Glensheen was a relic, beautiful but heavy. Elisabeth Congdon, elderly, unmarried, and increasingly alone, lived surrounded by servants, antiques, and memories that never softened. The world outside changed. America moved faster. Families grew looser. But inside Glensheen, time remained locked. And into this frozen system stepped someone who did not belong, Roger Caldwell. He appeared harmless, well-spoken, attentive, helpful. But Glensheen had never been kind to outsiders. Caldwell occupied space where others moved quietly. He asserted where others deferred. Slowly, power began to shift. Caldwell gained access not just to rooms, but to decisions. He spoke for Elisabeth more than she spoke for herself. He positioned himself between her and the world. The servants noticed. A tightening of control. Glensheen, once a structure of inherited authority, was becoming a bottleneck, and bottlenecks create pressure. For Elisabeth, the dependence felt practical. For Caldwell, it felt like leverage. By the summer of 1977, Glensheen was no longer merely cold, it was brittle. On June 27th, everything contained for decades reached its limit. The night arrived quietly. The sun sank behind Lake Superior. Lamps were switched on in their usual order. Inside a house of 39 rooms, only a handful were occupied. Elisabeth Congdon, 83, prepared to sleep. She was fragile now, dependent, afraid, and Caldwell knew the house, the routines, the locks, the silence. At some point during the night, violence entered. Elisabeth was attacked near the staircase. She did not survive. Elsewhere, a night nurse named Velma Pietila, who had no fortune, no power, no legacy, was also killed. Collateral damage. The mansion absorbed it all. No screams heard. No alarms triggered. The thick walls swallowed everything. By morning, Glensheen looked unchanged. But inside, the illusion was gone. Police found no signs of forced entry. Whoever did this knew the house. Suspicion narrowed on Caldwell. Stories shifted. Timelines bent. He was arrested, tried, and convicted. But the trial didn't bring closure. The deeper question remained: how did a house built to represent success become the stage for such brutality? The answer lay in the environment. A system that rewarded silence over honesty, control over connection, appearance over care. The murders were shocking, but not inexplicable. They were the final expression of a structure that had outlived its usefulness. That night ended the myth of Glensheen. From then on, the mansion would be remembered as a warning about what happens when power, isolation, and silence coexist unchecked. Today, Glensheen stands quietly above Lake Superior. The lawns green, the windows clean, the lake still moving as it always has. But it is no longer a home. It is a record. A record of what happens when wealth replaces intimacy, structure replaces trust, and silence is mistaken for stability. The murders didn't change Glensheen's meaning. They revealed it. The house chose exposure over concealment. Rooms once private became public. Stories once whispered were told plainly. Transparency did what control never could. Visitors now walk through Glensheen not to admire luxury alone, but to feel its weight, to sense how distance stretches relationships, how corridors create separation, how silence practiced for generations becomes dangerous. The real legacy of Glensheen is no longer industrial ambition. It is a warning written in stone: wealth cannot substitute for care. Power without balance corrodes. Houses, like families, inherit the values they are built upon. The house still stands, but it no longer pretends to be innocent. And in that honesty, it has finally found a kind of peace.